when Joe Biden made the, I think, remarkable decision to step down, I can't imagine a human, doing that, step away from the most powerful job in the world, literally, for the good of the country. That really energized me at a level when Kamala was settled on, and it happened pretty quickly, energized me at a level that I hadn't expected. And it just catalyzed this enormous outflow of energy. Was like, man, I didn't know how depressed I was. Holy cow. And as I was sharing that enthusiasm, one of our colleagues encouraged me, Miriam, you have to write about that. And like, put it out there and put it on LinkedIn. And I'm like, man, I've never, crossed the streams of politics and business, because there's always been too much risk, and you try to stay apolitical, and you don't want to offend a customer or whatever, impact your business negatively. If you're public, you can't say anything if you're an officer. So generally, but at this point in my life, Lori, chapter 4, I'm now starting a new business. And so all that fear's going off, like, oh, you can't say anything because what if you offend somebody that might be a customer, and well, this is your own money, and no. I was like, no, okay. This is actually more important than money. It's more important than my job. It's more important than my next business. This is an opportunity for us as a nation, in my view, to move forward.
This is Inspiring Women, and I'm Lori McGraw, and today we are speaking with Miriam Paramore, and Miriam is a friend. She is an outstanding executive leader, and she just started a new company called RxUtility, and today we're going to talk about RxUtility, but we're going to talk about a couple things. We're actually here in Nashville at the very awesome and cool Nashville Sessions Conference, and Miriam, in addition to the many things that she's done, she is from the inaugural class of the Nashville Healthcare Council Fellows. We're going to talk about that too. That was an early beginning, but she's one of the most connected people here in Nashville. Let me just tell you, where it happens, about 18 people have stopped her just to get coffee this morning to say hello. Miriam, thank you for being on Inspiring Women.
Laurie, thank you so much. This is a huge treat. I've been really excited, looking forward to doing this with you. And it was just such a treat that it came together here at Sessions. I can do it in person with you. So thank you very much.
I know. We're in a glass booth, everyone.
It's very cool.
It's very funky and cool. And there's
cool.
a lot of people around who are looking at us like we're a little bit cuckoo, but that's okay.
Though I'll tell you, I did a podcast here yesterday afternoon.
Yep.
And this is a glass you can't see us, guys, so you can hear us. But the pod that we're inside of is a kind of a glass cube. Imagine that in your mind. And there's tall glass windows with the sun streaming in, heating up this glass cube yesterday afternoon, and it was a little toasty in here.
So it's like a sauna.
It's much cooler this morning.
A podcast sauna. All right, Miriam, let's get started. So I know you. We've known each other for a long time. Started at Women Business Leaders, where we're both members of that.
Yeah.
You're also a big advocate for innovation, investing as a woman investor, which is a fantastic thing that you do. But give us a little bit of your background. I know you, but tell the world a little bit more about you. Okay.
Thank you, Lori. I have been in healthcare professionally my whole career. And as I was thinking about this podcast with you and thought about, what do I do and what's my story? I thought a little bit about like how I got here sort of personally. So is that all right for me to just take a moment there, like pre-professional? There are a couple of thoughts that I've been wanting to share that I think your listeners may resonate with. And one is that I have had a long and successful career, and I didn't go to a fancy school, and I don't have a master's degree. And my parents were, my dad was a preacher, so you can imagine where we fell on the bell curve of, sort of income. And the reason I share that is I used to think when I was younger that, only people that went to fancy schools and only people that had master's degrees or an MBA from Harvard or, went to Cornell or MIT or something like that, those were sort of the smart people. And those are the people that could succeed in business. And that's really not true. And as I've sort of grown up as an adult, my career path started I have a degree in math and computer science, and I started out as a programmer right here in Nashville for HCA. That was my introduction to healthcare, was just what you call go get a job right after you graduate from college. But I also started really young. I ended up going to college at 16, so I was only 20 when I graduated. So it kind of gave me a head start in the industry, but it sort of reinforced this feeling that I had that I don't quite really fit, because I was always too young for whatever everybody else was doing when I was in college. And I felt like I didn't have the educational pedigree that I needed to be successful in business. And I found out that wasn't true,
At
either.
all.
And I want to encourage everyone who may feel like where I came from, or who my parents were, or where I was able to go to school. Maybe I didn't go to school. I mean, some of our most successful in business terms people, college dropouts famously. So, all of those things are origin stories, but they're not necessarily obstacles unless you sort of let it feel like one, or sort of let it become one. For me, I think it felt like one, but it also gave me a fire. I'm very competitive and sort of ambitious. And I was like, I can probably do that. Mm-hmm. And then I would look up to people like you and people like our good friend, Glenn Tolman, who's been, super successful and also a friend and mentor. And I would say, be like Glenn. I would wake up and I hate for him to hear that, but I would try to model after the behavior that I would see. So, in my career, starting out as a programmer, I was just, like I said, I just kind of had a job. But I kind of came up what I would call through sort of 4 chapters of my career. Mm-hmm. One was just be a baby worker, just have a job. But I learned healthcare and the data that drives a hospital system and a health plan and how they interact really early on. Mm-hmm. Then ended up getting into standards work when, sort of HIPAA came out. But I got into management consulting, which is a great training ground, Ernst & Young, for young professionals that kind of help you up level and see a little bit more strategically around business processes. That's sort of where I got interested in using technology and information for business problems. Mm-hmm. I ended up being recruited into Anthem, and my first sort of CEO job, I was only 30, but I was running a subsidiary of Anthem that was what we would call today a clearinghouse. It's like Change, the one that crashed, which I actually worked at when it was called MDON, but it didn't crash during those days.
No.
But running that business got me into the revenue cycle of healthcare, which is sort of in the mid-90s when healthcare really started to digitize claims, if you can believe it. Still, a lot of it was paper. And so
I remember, Miriam.
Yes.
I remember.
Well, I think of you as younger. So that sort of became, I guess, maybe the second chapter, which was I'm now an executive. Well, what does that mean? What does it take to run a business unit or a P&L or that kind of thing? I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So like companies that are just tech can be companies in healthcare. And somewhere along those lines, I really fell in love with the healthcare industry. I now had exposure to providers, payers, ambulatory providers as well as institutional. And I learned what used to be called medical billing, which is now called revenue cycle, at the level of this is what it takes to post a payment and how the technology sucks and things like that. And so, we got all that off the ground. That was a subsidiary that we did franchise for multiple Blue plans and Medicare. So we really high volume data movement back before the cloud and so forth. And sort of the second chapter of my career was then becoming an executive at MDON. And MDON is now Change Healthcare. But when I was there, and this is a familiar story for you, maybe some of your listeners, Only Girl in the Room would be the title of the book, if I ever write it.
Yeah.
So the only female executive on the executive team, a team of 8. And George Lazenby, who brought me in, I was the first executive hire after he became CEO of MDON, which was a derivative of WebMD, if you can believe that, from way back in the day. Excuse me, I'm going to take a sip.
We could do a little map of sort of like all the country or company origins and sort of like, where they roll up to.
It's funny. In fact, the name MDON, which I always thought was a terrible name because it's kind of hard to pronounce. Nobody knew how to spell it. It is the Eon came from Healthion.
Yep.
And the EM in front of it, EMDEON, came from phonetic spelling of MD for WebMD. So they took WebMD and Healthion and shoved it together and came up with this word MDON that nobody else had used, so they could
And
trademark
this is why
it.
you and I don't have marketing degrees, because we know for a fact that was not a good idea.
But we would have had a better name, I'm sure. Without
I think we would have.
Without a marketing degree, we would have had a better
Or
name.
at least T-shirts. Yes.
So that role for me was pivotal in my career. And the reason I kind of got that role was because I had just worked really hard
Yep.
in the industry and work that I didn't get paid for. For example, lots of volunteer work with HIMSS, lots of volunteer work with other trade associations that were in kind of the technical guts of trying to get standards developed and things like that. So I had relationships. George came in as CEO, brought me in as Executive Vice President of Strategy. I ended up running product development for the entire business and was heavily involved with the corp dev. And we took the business from about $600 million, $1.2 billion in about 6 years, took it public, largest health IT IPO in history at the time, 2009. Then we ended up taking the business back private, and that's when our executive team essentially left. So that was 2013. So that was like chapter 2. And so that was a really successful period. I learned a ton, and now I feel like I can wear an executive suit. I feel like a little less of an imposter with the imposter syndrome. It was also my first initiative, or the first time I created what we now call a DEI group. And I'd love to tell that story. We can come back to it when we talk about HELP at the end, women's healthcare leaders, whenever you want to talk about it. So chapter 3 was like, well, okay, well, now what do I want to do? And I did a few things, but I ended up becoming president of a company called Optimize Rx, which was a NASDAQ company. The first company I had worked on that joins the life sciences sector with the healthcare service delivery sector digitally. And I can tell you that still really doesn't happen, and Optimize was one of the few. And since my expertise had kind of evolved into multi-sided digital networks over the years, payers of all kinds, providers of all kinds, pharmacies of all kinds, including specialty, I was like, man, I don't know that much about these manufacturers, but there's a world of opportunity if we can bridge what I call, this is like Australia and North America, lack of a digital bridge. And when we talk about interoperability so much in health IT, it's true. That's just within the service delivery ecosystem and payment. But you have this whole research, life sciences. They are two different continents for the lack of interoperability. So there's just a ton of opportunity, and that's kind of what takes me into after Optimize RX. I really kind of learned, that was chapter 3, what that digital divide was and what the opportunities were. That was the seed of what became RxUtility. Then I started into the 4th chapter of my career, which is where I always wanted to be, Lori. I was like, oh my goodness, who are these people that have money? Because remember, I was like, a person who kind of like, I don't know, I'm just a programmer, right? And I was like, oh, I think I can run things and learn how to be an executive. But you always have a boss, even if you're in a publicly traded company, even if you're on the board. But you don't really know that when you're a young professional. You're kind of like, oh, if I could just be in that chair, I'd be sort of the boss. But no. So, you can be the CEO. The board is still your boss. If you're public or private, the shareholders are kind of your boss. And, there's always so much to report to.
I want to get to chapter 4, because one of the things, and this sort of, origin story and trajectory is a familiar one, where a sort of like, girl goes to work, works like crazy, works really hard, starts to show up in ways that, larger and larger positions, becomes an executive, realizes that you can do something of magnitude. It's all about impact. It's not just about the paycheck. It's always about getting something done. And then comes chapter 4. And I look at chapter 4 and I want to hear where we're going with RxUtility as okay, I've done things, I've made things, and now I'm thinking about what else am I going to do? I have a tremendous amount of energy. I have all this experience. I have smarts. I now fully appreciate to a large degree, how complicated healthcare actually is, how upside down a lot of the metrics are. And as a woman executive, as an inspiring woman, that you've made it in places where others haven't, and you're a role model for that. So what do you do with all that? Sometimes women just sort of say, it's time to take it easy. It's time to sort of smell the roses. It's whatever. You chose a different path. Your energy has led you to other things, and that path is innovation, doing something new, big vision.
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Great setup. I thought I might not smell the roses, but take a little bit of a step back in the advisory work that I do with private equity, operating advisor for Goldman Sachs and others. And that's fun to do. Board work is fun to do. It isn't the same as creating something. And so work, in air quotes I'm saying here for your listeners, is my creative process. So I'm not a painter, musician, those types of, it feels very artistic to me. It's creative for me, and it's life affirming and energy giving. So as I grew up through my career, as we've discussed, by the time I get here, then you do have a level of confidence and, in fact, resources that you didn't otherwise have, because there's relational resources, there's capital resources, there's skill and expertise. And what I hinted at earlier with what I saw the opportunity in Optimize Rx is that I had just learned about the scale of copay coupons. So everybody is familiar with GoodRx because they're fairly well-known brand, and those are cash coupons, and they're doing a great job. They help you comparison shop at pharmacies and so forth. But there's this treasure trove of things called pharmaceutical manufacturer copay coupons, and there's so many of them. This is a separate source of savings. That it's $10 billion a year every single year. But only about 20% of it is used. And I was very motivated by that. And I looked at that hard. Why is that? What are the issues?
Why is that? I mean, because it's confusing, I think, is the answer. Like, you know, just like the cost of, medications is, everyone knows it's out of control. People are rationing their medications.
Absolutely.
And figuring it out in the moment, when you're at the pharmacy or at the physician office, it's a mess.
It's a mess.
So I want to know why there's so little of $10 billion just sitting on the table. But what can be done about that? Because that's money that people need. These medications are expensive.
It is, and one of the things that emerged for me in using technology to improve healthcare was a personal mission statement that I developed for myself about 10 years ago. And my personal mission statement is to improve the U.S. healthcare system through the power of information. Because I've been a nerd to get things to be data instead of paper and standardized data. Now it's information. But if it doesn't move to people, if it's not distributed and actionable, it doesn't matter. And so that's the problem that we're solving. It's truly a lack of awareness, and it's a lack of digital distribution. And so when I looked at that, I thought, I know how to do those things. I know how to make things digitally, and I know how to distribute things in a multi-sided network. Because what we have to get digital flow, digital liquidity, and not interoperability problems, but true digital equity, or what I think of as digital data equity. The data has to move in a way that it can be consumed by applications and other pieces of software, and then it can get to providers and to patients. And I thought, man, here's how we do that. So how we do that is we created it's the first time in my career, which is a long career, that I can use the word unique in a piece of software that I have developed. And unique means there's only one of them, like it's unique. So I've created the only database of all of these $10 billion of savings, and we've made that easily accessible through simple APIs. Because our path to putting this money in the wallet of the consumer, keeping it, improving their health and health care, is to use the health IT ecosystem that already exist.
What if I wasn't using these digitally, in terms of what you've created with RxUtility, what was I doing before? To access these $10 billion worth of coupons?
Do you remember, or you can think of any ad that you've seen on TV and or radio? At the very end, they'll say, if you have problems affording this, blah, 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 go to www.AstraZeneca.com. They talk real fast, and if you're looking at a print ad, it's very, very tiny
That's
print.
when I'm at the refrigerator not paying attention, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so there was because there is no clear way to make money doing something, people won't do it. And so I had a little bit of a gift in that one of the product lines Optimize Rx had in its distribution of data from the life sciences sector to the healthcare services delivery sector. Remember Australia to the North American continent. was some of these savings, but it was a very, very small scale, and I'll put that in real terms. We might do it for 50 brands
Yep.
at Optimize, and we were one of the few that does it in the country. I have 1,215 brands
Yep.
in the database that I have, and it's $10 billion. It's a scale mover, right?
Yep.
So if we digitize it and let it flow, that's where we're going. But if someone just hunted and tried to find it,
Yep.
first of all, a doctor's not going to do that even if they know it's there.
That's right.
The pharmacist will actually try to do it. I have
Yep.
a lot of PharmDs I've worked with. They don't have the time
Yeah.
to go behind. And now we've seen that people know GoodRx enough that a pharmacist might say, oh, look it up on GoodRx.
Yeah.
Well, there's no, quote, GoodRx for this $10 billion
Yeah.
until now, which is called RxUtility.
Yeah.
So I called it utility because it's a tool that the existing health IT ecosystem can plug into.
And who are you looking to get plugged to? So,
Okay.
like, who are your first, target customers that you're going after?
I'm gonna answer that in terms of what patients and real people. I say real people. We're
Yeah.
all real people, but you
Yeah.
know what I mean when I say what real people do is we get sick and then we go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Almost every time we go to the doctor now, there's some kind of app on your phone that'll
Right.
help you check in.
Right.
Okay. Even if you're going to the hospital for some sort of procedure, Freesia is a popular company that does this. It might not be them, it might be something else. So you go in, you get to the doctor. A lot of then, the prescribing that happens, those meds that happen when you're in the office, they go, oh, well, you need this and this, or you're in the hospital. That script is issued out of the EHR, out of
Yep.
the e-prescribing module. So right there, if we can be at the point of prescribe, that EHR or e-prescribing module can just plug in, and it's a simple API. It's,
Yep.
is there a coupon? Yes or no? And they can optimize that API however they want, because my goal is to get them to innovate with the content.
Yep.
Move the content forward. If it's digital at that point, Lori, it gets embedded digitally into the script and flows directly to the
Perfect.
pharmacy. Auto adjudicates as the secondary payer. That's the best case scenario.
Yep.
But let's say that I'm not in every EHR,
Yep.
which I probably never will be, because there's some of them I won't let anybody in. There's another time. There's the point of dispense.
Yeah.
So we do that with the pharmacy management systems, the things
Yeah.
that the people are using behind the counter when they're keying in things.
Yeah.
So that it can pull up. So the med's there. Is there a coupon? Yep. Okay. Auto adjudicate and go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's say that it's post dispense.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take one more example. If you're on a discharge path, you have an ADT file that comes out of the system. Admit discharge transfer
Yeah.
is what that stands for. And you have discharge meds.
Yeah.
And on that stream of data, a lot of times, well, I think every time they print that stuff and hand it to you. There's some portals that are doing better now, but that can simply be appended, and the consumer can have it in their hands.
Well, I think that
They
it
take
just
it.
as you work through all of these use cases, I mean, look, let's face it. I mean, the cost of medications is just too high,
Way too
for
high.
people to afford it.
Right.
And so anything that can be done that makes it easier for people to access these needed medications is important. I mean, I just learned recently that, of the so many people who are on medications, 35% of them are non-adherent to
Right.
medications that they need, whether it's a chronic condition, acute episode, or whatnot. And a large portion of that 35% is due to affordability.
Yes.
It's not due to, like, they don't want to take the medications. They're not paying attention to what they
That's
need.
right.
It's affordability.
Right.
So I have to say, Miriam, this is an exciting company that you're building
Thank
with
you.
a big mission, and really hopeful that you are enormously successful. So
Thank you.
some of the things that I'm excited about is not just what you're doing, but also the energy that you bring to pretty much everything, Miriam, that you do, like everything. And I wanted to pivot us just
Yeah.
a little bit
Sure.
to another shared passion that we have, that you have taken and on steroids, and just made even bigger. And that has to do with what's happening politically
Yes.
in this
Yes.
country. And we're in I see the t-shirt. I see the t-shirt. We're in an important election cycle. You started an organization called Women Healthcare Leaders for Progress. And it's not about just a political, someone that you're supporting and asking us to support. It's an issue-based reason. This started from, I remember a conversation and something that you just had to put down on paper and wrote about that kind of went a bit viral, which is I thought I was depressed, or I didn't know how depressed I was
Yes.
until. So tell us a little bit about Women Healthcare Leaders for Progress.
Well, thank you so much. And you, as a co-founding member, are a pivotal part of that.
Riding on your coattails.
Put that shout right back at you. But when Joe Biden made the, I think, remarkable decision to step down. I can't imagine a human, doing that, step away from the most powerful job in the world, literally, for the good of the country. That really energized me at a level when Kamala was settled on, and it happened pretty quickly, energized me at a level that I hadn't expected. And it just catalyzed this enormous outflow of energy. Was like, man, I didn't know how depressed I was. Holy cow. And as I was sharing that enthusiasm, one of our colleagues encouraged me, Miriam, you have to write about that. And like, put it out there and put it on LinkedIn. And I'm like, man, I've never, crossed the streams of politics and business, because there's always been too much risk, and you try to stay apolitical, and you don't want to offend a customer or whatever, impact your business negatively. If you're public, you can't say anything if you're an officer. So generally, but at this point in my life, Lori, chapter 4, I'm now starting a new business. And so all that fear's going off, like, oh, you can't say anything because what if you offend somebody that might be a customer, and well, this is your own money, and no. I was like, no, okay. This is actually more important than money. It's more important than my job. It's more important than my next business. This is an opportunity for us as a nation, in my view, to move forward. So progress. And having a diverse candidate, meaning a non-white male candidate by itself, is exciting. Okay. To have someone with her strength, poise, experience, and gravitas was double encouraging. So I was on one of those early calls, the White Women for Kamala call. There were 160,000 women on that call, celebrities on that call. Zoom broke. The DNC donation button broke, and it was a DIY, and it was so real, and I'd never been part of anything like that prior. All I had done politically was just I would donate, support, maybe do a little bit of, volunteer, but not much. And I really took to heart what Michelle Obama said, do something. And I took Kamala's words to heart when she said her mom used to say, and not half-assed. So I was like, man, so I broke that wall, knowing that in this point in my life, there's risk associated with it, but it's so important. I would rather do that. And the outpouring, the inbound response to it blew my mind from doing that. And it's got like 10,000, posts and reposts and different things. And so out of that, I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a commitment to myself. I'm going to do something every week. Do something actual, a doing thing, not talking about it. I'm going to start that by get a call together. Who else feels this way? I just said, DM me if you want. And we had that extraordinary call that you were part of. Out of that call, and here's innovation at work, out of that call came this idea of an open letter. Missy Krasner got on it. I didn't know until that call how active you were. I knew you were active, but I didn't really know what you were doing. I didn't know Lori Evans-Bernstein, our friend. I didn't know how active I just didn't, you don't know, because you don't have that conversation all the time. So everyone had all these good ideas, strength, and they had resources and tools, and they wanted to get involved. So I was like, holy cow. So this open letter emerged. I think now we have over 500 signatures. And you say, well, why do an open letter? What does it matter? It really does matter. And here's what's happened since then. So you've got 500 people. Then now we've got our male allies coming along who are willing to take a stand and say, these are the issues that are important to me in terms of our nation. And I'll go back to your comment about issues. So I believe, and I think we believe, that a woman's right to choose is a primary fundamental right. To me, that is a subset of our individual rights, our freedom of choice as American citizens, and our freedom to design and live our own lives unencumbered by other people's definition of things or who happens to be in power at a particular time.
Yeah, and I'll just to pile on to that, and I think that, for me, first of all, the energy and the community of just needing to do something is important. I need a place to put this energy because the issues are so enormous. It's hard, I think, for people to understand the magnitude of this issue now that it has been taken away, the security of knowing that women can choose what to do with their own bodies. Yesterday, I was reading that there are 210 crimes of pregnancy that have gone through courts since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Crimes of pregnancy. Now, we don't know the details of that, but that can even be a thing. So we are in a new world, and the level of security of the ground that we're working on in terms of walking on in terms of what is no longer available to women. It's very, there is no more important issue to me. I am ecstatic of the diversity of Kamala Harris as a candidate, but it is that reason of what that means for women, specifically the backward turning of the clock that I didn't think was possible has happened, and it is simply the most critical issue for me in terms of what's there. And there's a whole host of other things that I'm counting on, but I can't appreciate you enough, Miriam, for that getting out of the depression, taking the action, and then just clearing the way for others to come along with you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being on this journey and for letting us talk about it here, because, people use their time in different ways. And what you just discussed, you said the word backward. And what I want to say as it relates both to personal and business and sort of being inspired, if we look at where we've come from and where we're going, to me, there's a civil rights issue broadly defined. There's certainly women's rights and there's women health care. And it's not even just health care. We had the 2 deaths in Georgia just recently, like people are, they're dead. And I use that word, with some emphasis because it's not a theoretical thing. And I believe in the United States of America that it shouldn't be a geographical thing. And, I don't believe that a states' rights approach is anything other than a smokescreen, because I'm trying to think of a states' rights issue. Let me think back to, I don't know, something that's not related to control and anti-democratic measures where we have, let's say, slavery was a states' rights issue, civil rights, women's voting was a states' rights issue, civil rights was a states' rights issue, integration of schools was a states' rights issue. You can see where this sort of belongs if you want to use that smoke screen to believe it. But if you live on one side of the river and I live on the other, you're going to tell me we don't have equal rights in the United States of America, because one's one state and one's another. One's Kentucky and one's Indiana.
Well, now we're getting worked up. We're getting worked up, and we could talk about this, a lot. But let's bring it back. So you and I share this passion, and also the appreciation for 500 other, women executives to put their name in print out loud for the world to see that these issues are that critical to them, that they're making this choice to stand up for women healthcare leaders. For progress. But that energy, that passion, that's sort of some of the defining characteristics of who you are, Miriam. As you think about closing out this Inspiring Women conversation, I'd love to bring it back to just sort of like, we're in chapter 4. Yeah. Okay. What does sort of like chapter 4.1 or next look like, for you? I really love how you've sort of described this entire arc of what you're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. I have learned through the different kind of businesses that I've run, and as I've seen, unfortunately, the Commonwealth report came out last week, and the top 10 industrialized nations were last again in cost and quality. And I won't go on that ramp because I could. But I still believe that technology and information is a powerful lever to improve things. I've landed on, for individual people, for the rights, the rights and the health and the equality and the affordability of people around their health. So RxUtility gives me an opportunity to put my skills and resources to work in a way that tangibly touches people. And so it's sort of a micro change, maybe then a macro change. If you were talking about, value-based care versus fee-for-service is macro. This is something, it's a tool that already exists. We just need to mobilize it and get it moving. So that keeps me energized and inspired because I know that those people can experience the medication that they deserve, through these affordability tools. And I'll give you an example of Ozempic. I have it in my purse right there, but there's a manufacturer copay coupon for Ozempic for $25 out of pocket per month. And that's a $1,000+
That's huge.
Drug. If you're on a high deductible health plan, if you're in a, high tier of your pharmacy, if you have a co-insurance scenario, these out-of-pocket things, 30% of the time will keep people from even getting it, let alone the 35-40% you mentioned about abandoning it.
Yep.
So people can't adhere to medicine that they can't afford to buy.
Right.
So 4.1 to me is the first phase of the business is we're going to get all this $10 billion to every person that needs it, every dollar to every person that needs it. But then we want to break down these silliness, sort of nonsense barriers that we have around forms that people have to fill out. So we can automate that so much more easily now than we used to. AI is truly powerful. We use it in product development. We use it in QA.
Yep.
We use it in the admin of the business. And these are exciting days. So technology has had a huge breakthrough with where AI is, and it's not hype, it's real. You can harness it and use it. The industry is huge, but it has an IT ecosystem embedded in it. So let's just flow. So we don't have to blow anything up. Let's just flow stuff through it. It's great. And then we'll move through kind of the nonsense part, but we've gotten the money to the patients first. And that keeps me motivated because I've seen people be sick. I've just lost my parents in the last 2 years. People need help with access to health care. And this is one way. And their medication is just pivotal to getting and staying well. So that's 4.1 is just continuing to break down the barriers.
Well, I think this 4.1 is actually sort of like, the preview to what is going to be a chapter 5, a chapter 6, a chapter 7. This has been an incredible, inspiring women conversation. I've been speaking with Miriam Paramore, the founder and creator of RxUtility. She's on chapter 4, but everyone listening, she is just at the beginning. Miriam, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lori. What a pleasure. I appreciate it.
This has been an episode of Inspiring Women with Lori McGraw. Please subscribe, rate, and review. We are produced at Executive Podcast Solutions. More episodes can be found on inspiringwomen.show. I am Lori McGraw, and thank you for listening.